Thank you and welcome to this meeting of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery Museum Management Committee. I'm Lawrence Williams, I'm the Vice Chair of the committee. Firstly, I'd like to ask if I may, Democratic Services Officer, to read the housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. That is up to any exclusion of press and public items. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are switched off or turned to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 1 on the agenda is the election of a chairman. And I'd like, if I may, to nominate Stuart Bartholomew as chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Andy. Anybody else? Good. In that case, Stuart, very happy to say that you're chairman of the board again.
Thank you very much. Yes, I should sit there. Well, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. And it allows me to turn to the second item on our agenda, which is the election of a vice chairman of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery Museum Management Committee. And I'd like to nominate Councillor Williams.
Very happy to second that, Chairman.
Is there any other nomination? May I congratulate you, Lawrence, on your election. Good. Item 3, apologies for absence. And I believe we've had those from Fiona Winrow and Alan Frost. Rebecca, is that?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you very much. Item 4, statutory item. I asked whether there are any declarations of interest relating to items on this agenda. None are admitted. Thank you. You are in possession of the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any amendments members wish to make to those minutes? In which case, I think they now stand. Matters arising from the minutes, I think, are included within the agenda of this afternoon. That I will just look round to see if there are any matters arising by members. None. In which case, we can move to item 6. Which relates to public issues, and this is an opportunity to receive questions from public related to the Russell Cotes Museum and Gallery Management, and I believe there are several questions, and I think Councillor Martin, you are going to help us with this item.
I am indeed, thank you, Chair. So I have 3 questions. Sorry.
I'm remiss in not welcoming Alderman Chappell to the meeting formally. Thank you for joining us, and I believe that these are questions you have given us in advance and to which Andy will respond.
Microphone.
It's very good of you to invite me to ask these 3 questions, which I think are important, and forgive my occasional intervention in the affairs of the Management Committee. But I've been involved, of course, with the museum since 1976, when I was appointed Borough Solicitor, and I regarded this as one of the jewels in the crown. And of course, the Bournemouth Borough Council Act was promoted under my direction and with the involvement of Sharp Pritchard. I'm delighted to see Sharp Pritchard involved again in amending section 57, I think it is. And of course, as a councillor, I continued my interest in the Russell Cotes right up to the present day. These three questions, I hope you'll forgive me. I do think they're important. Will the council continue to make an annual grant or subsidy to the new company, the independent company, as part of the financial settlement? How will this be secured? Secondly, and this is a question I did ask in council several months ago, even a year ago. In the event of this CLG, that's the new independent company, going into administration, what will happen to the museum and the collection? Will it be disposed of as the administrator or liquidator deems fit? And thirdly, kindly provide details of the new IT, legal and financial arrangements. Will the board be able to externalize these services, or will the town hall continue to provide them? Now, in my practice and in my experience with the Charity Commission over many years, they have always insisted that an independent body retain the right to get its own legal advice. That's a strong recommendation. I just wondered whether the Charity Commission are asking for that in this case. Much obliged to you, Chairman. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And can I just say, lovely to see Alderman Chapel back in the town hall and taking such a close interest in the Russell Cotes Museum all these years after you were last a councillor. I think it's very refreshing, and delighted to see you here. So thank you. If I can just answer those three questions. Question one, I'll just remind everybody what the question is. Will the council continue to make an annual grant stroke subsidy to the CLG as part of the financial settlement? How will this be secured? So the answer is no, is the direct and straightforward answer, and consequently nothing beyond what has been agreed is secured. To be clear, there shall no longer be an annual grant. The council has committed to provide £2 million up front, in addition to the asset transfer of the study centre, circa £500,000, and a one-off maintenance grant, £250,000. And the transfer of any residual reserves reserve amounts on vesting day. No further financial support is included in the council's medium-term financial plan. However, the £2 million is broadly equivalent to 5 years of support based on recent activity, so could be inferred as covering 5 years, but the company shall need to manage its financial affairs, and subject to how successful or otherwise the council is, the £2 million may last for a longer or shorter time frame. Whilst there is not an expectation from the council's perspective of requests for further financial support, the February decision does not forbid any request being made now or in the future by the Russell Cotes Art Gallery and Museum, but any decision to provide more financial support shall need to be made in line with the normal financial regulations and governance processes. So question 2, in the event of the CLG going into administration, what will happen to the museum and the collection? Will it be disposed of as the administrator deems fit? So the answer to that is, we understand that the museum, house and collections are in permanent endowment, and therefore there is no legal mechanism for them to be sold or disposed of in any circumstances. The purpose of the new governance arrangements is to ensure the long-term financial and organisational sustainability of the Russell Cotes. The precise arrangements, therefore, in the unlikely event of the CLG going into administration, are subject to legal advice from Sharp Pritchard, which we have been unable to procure in time for this meeting, but which will follow in a written statement which will be sent to Alderman Chapel and included in the minutes for a complete record. And finally, Kindly provide the details of the new IT, legal and financial arrangements. Will the board be able to externalise these services, or will the town hall continue to provide them? And the answer is currently the museum receives its IT, finance and HR support services from the council. As part of the changes towards full independence, the new body, RCAGM Sole Trustee Limited, will procure a new provider for each of these services. Through the National Lottery Heritage Fund supported governance change project, a scope of works is being developed for each of these areas to use as the basis for good value provision to be identified, suitable to the scale of the newly independent museums. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
That a written set of answers be available to you, and they will of course be in the minutes of the meeting. Item 7, the Russell Cotes Museum and Gallery update report, and I'm inviting you, Sarah, to summarise that which is available to us in our papers.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll go through and just pick out some highlights, and obviously happy to take any questions, comments. Really successful, I think, end of the financial year. So the last 6 months have continued to be really good visitor numbers. So you see that I think we reached a sort of record number, 53,000 visitors over the whole year. And that's despite being closed for 4 weeks in January. I think that's the highest since we've introduced charging. Obviously, the charging mechanisms have changed and obviously impacted on numbers. But since charging has been introduced all year round, I think those are the highest figures we've ever had. And that compares with national numbers, which are significantly down. So I think it's really, we're really pleased with that. That performance, and you can see that we finished the year really strongly with really high, probably record visitor numbers for February and March. Usually these things are a combination of a number of factors, some of which are in our control, like good marketing and good exhibitions, and some of them, like the weather, are completely outside our control. But that was very good. And I have to say that I understand the first 2 months of this year, performance is good or slightly better than even than last year. So fingers crossed that we have another good year. Admission charges we increased to £9.50. There's been no evidence of any negativity about that. Still represents extremely good value for money. So we'll keep an eye on the impact of that. Obviously, the building continues to be a major concern. So we've had a lot of really quite catastrophic events, which have not been great. And it's the vulnerability of the building within its poor state of repair that continues to be a major concern for us. And we had lead theft and break-in in the last 6 months, which obviously have been a cause of great concern. But they have now been resolved. And we just stay, as ever, alert to anything we can do to improve the situation or reduce the kind of risk. And I have to say that the front gate has been replaced and is looking very smart. So that's since this report was written. We're going to come on at the end of the last agenda item is the audit, the new audit policy. And under that policy, if you agree it, but we have done it anyway, we have done an audit. We have to undertake an audit of 127 objects in the collection. They were all found. And also we did an audit because through Hickson's, through our financial auditors, they did an additional audit. So just to say that that's now in process and we'll continue with that. I would like to just point out that we had a temporary collections and exhibitions officer, or engagement officer rather, for about 18 months. We had 2 members of staff over a short period who were really helpful in terms of improving and developing our interpretation engagement activities. Those contracts have now come to an end, so we are back to our sort of kind of really core team. So there's a lot of interest in doing further activities, but it's really very difficult for us with our kind of staffing levels. So So at the moment, I put in there about the interest in improving our digital offer, but without more capacity, it's really on hold for the moment. A few exhibitions that have happened. So I think at the last meeting we just had the opening of the Siam exhibition, and the Thai ambassador came down for a rather nice event, which was rather well attended, and that exhibition was very successful, the photography exhibition, and is now down. Now we've currently got a rather wonderful exhibition of Albert de Bellaroche, who is a contemporary and a friend of Singer Sargent, so sort of brings that sort of Belle Epoque kind of period to life in the museum. Just because I'm talking about it, can I just there's those little leaflets there. The next exhibition coming up is called Artist on Purbeck, Spirit of Place, which will be a wonderful exhibition, particularly focusing on sort of 20th century painters who are working on Purbeck. It's proving to be quite an expensive exhibition to fund because of the costs of all the transport. I mean, the bigger the exhibition, obviously, the bigger the costs. So we are doing a fundraising drive. So if anyone has any contacts, we'd be really grateful. Anyone who might want to sponsor that, support that in any way, even on a small scale, it all helps. So I've got some little leaflets. If anyone can help on that, we'd be very grateful. Yes, the costs are mounting, but it will be there's some beautiful work in there. Should be lovely. One thing where I don't know if anyone has been attended, but we've been running a monthly late program of evening events, which have been really successful. But unfortunately, we've sort of rather been too successful for our own good. So we are reworking those slightly. We're reducing the number of them, and we're starting to charge for them because they, with the numbers that we're attending, were just too great for the spaces that we have available. So I think for Christmas we realised about a week before the event that we already had sold out something like 300 tickets. So we were absolutely at fire capacity. So we've started to ticket them and to charge for them, and it will be really interesting to see by changing that model what that impact has, because the Friends tickets have largely, I think, been driven by attendance at the lates, but it's just not we haven't got the staff to develop the programme, and we just can't cope with those kind of numbers. So we'll be interesting to see what happens there. We're just keeping an eye on that for the next year. We've had some very good engagement with Bournemouth University and AUB. So we did a partnership event probably in the autumn with Bournemouth University, and through that we've developed a few projects with students, with various staff members, and so I think we're really hopeful that that's going to develop further. So it's just at the moment a kind of just an exploration this year of seeing what works, what doesn't work, and where we can go to create a kind of sustainable model for working with the university. AUB, we've had a close relationship over the years anyway. They, again, have done a few projects with us recently. They did a lovely art installation project, which was which was really enjoyable and interesting. Moving on, yes, success with Art Fund. So Art Fund introduced a new grant scheme called Going Places, where they're looking at trying to create networks of different museums that will then go out to create exhibitions, joint exhibitions with a community engagement element. We have formed a network with the Bowes Museum in Barnard Castle. If anyone's familiar with that, it's extraordinary Renaissance style purpose-built museum, literally on the edge of the sort of little town of Barnard Castle. It's quite an extraordinary place, a real place. And also with the Watts Gallery, which is up just on the outskirts of Guildford, which was the home to G.F. Watts, who was one of the most famous Victorian artists of his day. So the three of us are working together. And we're in a sort of development phase. So we're working together at the moment with them to look at what an exhibition programme might look like for over a 5-year period. And then that will be worked up to an application to the Heritage Lottery Fund, and there'll be funding for 5 years to develop those exhibitions, which would tour. So we do have a developer sort of an exhibition which would go to Durham, Surrey, and to Bournemouth. So it's really interesting opportunity. We're really just exploring at the moment. We've decided to focus particularly on young people as our target audience, to do something with young people probably again using the university, our connections with the university to try to develop activities. The funding is very, very significant. I mean, you know, sort of funding which is very significant beyond anything that we would normally be able to spend on exhibitions. So it's a real opportunity there. But it's obviously we've had some visits to. I've been up to Barnard Castle to have a look, and we talked to them. So we're just sort of in those negotiations at the moment. So it's a really exciting opportunity. Marketing wise, we've done really well. I think we were in the Sun and the Country Life in the same week, which I don't think many organisations have that kind of can claim that. So I think some really good coverage in nationals, locals. I think we're just generally there's just been a bit of a buzz, which has been really helpful. We won the Dorset Tourism Awards Silver Award, and we also won Tourism Business Award for Bournemouth, and we'll put in for some more awards. I think it's quite good sort of to be seen within the sector by doing those. So we're just going to looking at doing some more of that, those applications in this summer. Cafe's done very well. Has done extremely well. I think they're a little bit concerned because of the work that's going on the conservatory, that this summer might not be quite so strong because the terrace is slightly, well, it's covered in scaffolding, so that's a bit of a challenge. But we've got a much more secure staff and a bit more capacity there, so they're doing better, seeing much better results. And the shop is doing okay. There was a decrease on sales last year compared to the previous year, but the profit margins were pretty much the same. I think in the last year we sold a lot of books which don't give such good profit margins, so the profit margins have been fine. Again. Moving on, one area of development that we'd like to look into is around working with our volunteers to develop programs around visitor wellbeing and creativity. We know from visitor responses that what's so amazing about the Russell Cotes is you go in there and you're transported into a different place, and it's people just tell us how well they respond to that. So we'd like to build on that with our own volunteers, but also perhaps developing activities which we could then extend out to our visitors. And I think this is such an important kind of area currently, isn't it, looking at these kind of issues. So we with colleagues we're looking at trying to develop some more capacity so that we can do more of that kind of thing. So we're looking at some of the local fundraising local funding pots like Talbot Village, Valentine and so on to target some specific activity there. Sorry, moving on to funding more generally. So we received £6,000 from Neighbourhood SIL. So this came through our local councillors. That's been allocated to the garden and to the railings. So some work has already been done on the fountain, and very soon we'll be redecorating the little children's sculptures that go along the terrace, the railings. Everyone knows that people love them. They're in a very bad way. So that work will start hopefully very soon before the main sort of summer season gets going. I think that'll be rather lovely. We're great to do that. And there'll be some more work on the Japanese bridge and so on. So that will improve the garden and that kind of whole exterior area. The Bournemouth Civic Society gave us some funding to recreate a children's play pavilion in the garden. Sorry, Councillor Williams, can you pass me that bit of paper? So that's it. There you are. I think these are my props. I brought some props today. So these are the first concept designs that we've got. So this will be recreating the little children's pavilion that was there in the original garden, I think decayed about 20-30 years ago. So that's concept designs. To have a look at that. That will have to go through planners before we can obviously move on that one, but that's in progress. And we did receive 84,000, I think that number is now confirmed, £317 from Julia Stallard's legacy, and I have allocated that to hopefully support match funding for MEND, which I will come on to. I'll pick up the grant for the Lucy Kent Welsh under the next report on acquisitions, loans and disposals.
Deal with item 9.
Do you want me to deal with the MEND item 9? Shall I put that all together? We'll come back to that. Okay, that's fine. So that's a quick.
Oh, are there some questions? Sir, I'm sorry, I should know your name, but I'm George.
Certainly. Councillor George Farquhar, newly elected Mayor of Bournemouth. I'm pleased to be attending this particular meeting and hearing about the progress for the Russell Croats, particularly since I came to mention it a couple of times addressing the chamber, and I believe in my acceptance speech for mayor making as well. I'm pleased that so many recognise, including the aldermen, that it is very much the jewel in Bournemouth's crown. I just wanted to pass my personal thanks on to the team, that no small detail has been overlooked, and what caught my attention there, and just in my capacity as the mayor, for the thanks of the people of Bournemouth, is I happened after the inauguration to actually drop in to visit the staff at the Russell Cotes Museum, and I was touched to see how did you describe it in the railings? The different symbols of the beach scene, like bowls, etc. I was really touched because it reminded me, long before I moved to Bournemouth, of my first visits to the Russell Cotes Museum, where it was very different, and visits to Bournemouth and the whole stretch down there. And I'm so pleased to see that the Russell Cotes is taking that on to maintain that heritage and that link, because it's so vital for any visitors to the town to know that when they come back, they're being looked after, and it's being kept in perpetuity for those memories. So I just wanted to raise that and pass my thanks on to the team at the Russell Cotes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much indeed for that contribution. We're now moving to the item 8 about acquisitions, loans, disposals. I do enjoy this item, if only for its eccentricity, because I think the subject of the disposals principally is taxidermy. So we've had model boats, we've had one or two other items, including a wheelbarrow, but this occasion, a number of both cased and uncased items. I wonder if you'd just like to say a few words, Sarah, before we approve or otherwise those disposals.
Thanks very much. Okay, yeah, just before we go on to the lot of disposals, just acquisitions, just to say that we've acquired 5 studies, Lucy Kent Welsh sketches, and for that we got funding from Art Fund and from V&A, Arts Council England V&A purchase grant, and we with your approval, I think everyone, I emailed everybody, everyone agreed, we use some of our the funds that we have restricted for this purpose. They will be, so a press release went out the other Friday, just before the curfew, as it were, and those will go on display in the museum for a few months, because they're very light sensitive. So from July, probably they'll be on display next to the actual painting itself. Just point out before we move on again, borrowing that the Lucy Kent Welsh show went up to the National Horse Racing Museum in Newmarket and has come back, and that our lovely Burmese shrine that's on display in the Red Room went to the British Museum for the Burma to Myanmar exhibition, which was rather, I went to visit that private view, and that was it's been very well received. Currently on display, we have about half a dozen paintings which are in the Museum of San Domenico in Forlì, and I just brought this up to show you. So this is the catalogue, goodness me, of that show. It's a major pre-Raphaelite show at Forlì, which is just near Bologna. And actually I'm on holiday in Italy next week, so I'm going to go and visit that. But this is a major show. We've lent about half a dozen, you can have a look at paintings from our collection in that. So really puts pre-Raphaelitism on the map worldwide. So loans from all over the world. And then we've got a couple of things on at the moment at the Tate for Now You See Us, which is an exhibition about of female artists. Which so they're just, so do have a look at those. And then moving on to, yes, the highlight, the disposal. So this is almost really a technical disposal, because these are all items of taxidermy that have come into the collection one way or another, from locally or not. They are all on loan, on permanent loan, as it were, to the Hampshire Cultural Trust. And essentially, they will just move into their, we're hoping that they'll just move into their kind of permanent collection. So actually just kind of, it just clears them off our lists rather than being clearing any space, sadly. But we're just trying to get through all the taxidermy. If it's not related to Annie and Merton, wasn't collected by them, we'd be keen for them to move on.
Well, somewhat facetious introduction of that item did obscure really the significance of some of the loans which have taken place over the last months, and in particular those to support the pre-Raphaelite exhibition which you have described, Sarah. You can see by just the sheer quality and scale of that catalogue just how significant this area of painting is, and how significant, much more importantly, parts of our collection are to exhibitions of that sort. So there is a real international leverage that the Russell Cotes applies. So not only is it part of the spirit of this place, it also occupies significantly places elsewhere, and to the enormous prestige not only of the gallery but also of Bournemouth. You know, and it's often overlooked. I know I have shared with this committee on previous occasions, but one of the things that I experienced on a visit to Japan and to Tokyo on behalf of the university, I was in the subway, the Tokyo Metro, which is a labyrinth. And at that time, the National Museum of Tokyo was presenting a pre-Raphaelite exhibition, and Venus from the Russell Cotes was the image they were using to publicize that exhibition. And it was in enormous scale throughout the subway system. So you're standing on a platform in Tokyo, and there is the key painting of a Bournemouth museum. I don't think people often, are as alert to the importance of that type of export as they are to other things. So this is neither a bucket nor a spade. This is absolute international prestige. Well, thank you for that, Sarah. And I think it's necessary for us to formally approve. These are, are not really disposals because they've been on loan for a considerable period. They're merely being consolidated within the Hampshire Wildlife Trust. Are we in agreement? And I'm remiss is that we haven't formally received your earlier report. So I assume that we are happy to receive that. Good. That allows us to move to a very important item on our agenda, which is the update towards the Russell Cotes becoming an independent trust. I think members are aware of just the enormous amount of work which has gone into this process, and indeed alert to the amount of time which it has taken to get to the point where we are now. And very briefly, an application has been made under Section 73 of the Charities Act, so that the charity commissioners are able to repeal Section 57, to which Alderman Chappell referred to earlier, and to enable the council to be replaced as sole trustee by a new corporate trustee. We have now received a schedule from the charity commissioners who have been liaising with our solicitors, Sharp Pritchard, and that may be available to us shortly at this meeting. But we are now really waiting for the agreement to that schedule, and it being passed back to charity commissioners, who in turn will pass this to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, where under the current arrangements, they will be seeking time for it to be laid as an order in Parliament and for that order to be subject to negative approval, by which we mean it is not debated, it is laid there, and in as much as there are not objections, it is deemed passed. We do believe that some amendments have been made to the section 73, which may award the Secretary of State permission to agree. So that would obviate the necessity of it being laid as an order in Parliament. But we're not clear on this. It has been suggested by Sharp Pritchard, but if that were to happen, we would genuinely be the guinea pig, the first to have ever used that particular power. But all of you will be alert to the fact that Parliament is prorogued, so that order could not be laid at least for 3 months. And whatever administration takes place after July the 4th, there will be a period where parliamentary time is being negotiated. So, you know, the earliest that we could have such an order, if that is what's required, would be some 6 to 8 months hence. If it becomes an order, if it becomes the Secretary of State's permission, you will be aware that every minister is a minister until July the 4th. So there is a very slim possibility that the Secretary of State could approve this before the election. We will know more of that as we as time progresses, but it's very important to note that there is real progress towards the Russell Cotes becoming a fully independent trust. If the committee wished to discuss the appendix, which is available to you, this would only take place in exempt session. And if that is the case, I'm bound, as you know, to read the following exemption. I believe that Sharp Pritchard will be very happy to speak to that, but will not speak in public session. So is it your wish that we move into an exempt period of this meeting? You're happy for that? Yes, George. In which case, let me read the statement. Under section 100A of the Local Government Act of 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the item of business I have referred to, and that they involve since they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs 1 and 2 and in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing it. So
Do we have agreement on that?
as long as we have agreement on the floor, that is the session we will pass to.
Yes.
That is agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
Are we good to go?
yeah, we should.
I now ask for formal sort of approval of the recommendations that have been made in the early part of the meeting. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Good. Item 10, update on repair and renewal of the ACE Mend project. I think members are aware that an application was made to the Mend Fund, specifically set up to assist museums and galleries to execute emergency repairs and arrangements, largely reflecting on the problems that were encountered during a lengthy period of during the COVID emergency. I'm very pleased to report that we have now been invited to make the formal application. So the first round is very much a thinning out round. We have passed through that. And I think we can be very optimistic that with the detailed application that we're now working on, that we will be successful with this. What it represents is the opportunity to secure the building. The building is exceptionally vulnerable, and of course within it is this unique collection. So the fabric of the building and those things which protect it are critical to the ongoing sustainability of the museum and gallery, and this will help significantly. The fund that we are seeking is 1,418,000, and I can't remember the pence, but it's 1.4 million, to which there is a certain match funding of about $250,000. So we would be able to initiate some quite significant works on the building, and those are identified for you. Renewal of the foul drainage system, increased CCV, fire protection, and external decoration. All of these are really very important part of securing the envelope of the museum and gallery. And I think real congratulations should be awarded to Sarah, who has put together a very persuasive application and in our own way some very sensitive lobbying on behalf of the museum and gallery, which I think has been successful. Are there any questions which you may have? The final adjudication will be made in February of 2025, and projects would be given, I think, 18 to 24 months for execution. So we would hopefully see work being initiated from the late spring of next year and through into the autumn. And it will have a very visual impact because the external decoration is obviously something in the public domain, but unfortunately some of the very key infrastructure work will be invisible. But there are major problems about drainage there that have to be rectified in order for the building to be properly waterproofed. Thank you. I think we formally note the success thus far of the ACE Mend project. Are we agreed? Well, I agree.
I know, but
There we go. You're quite right, quite right. Now we can move to item 11, which relates to policies and procedures for audit and damage loss. There is a confidential appendix to this item, which you may wish to consider under the previous arrangements, which is that it is a non-public item. I don't know whether you will find that necessary, but this item is brought to the Management Committee's attention largely on the back of the issues relating to the British Museum and the extent to which reserve collection was not properly audited, and as we know, many thousands of objects were illegally dispersed. That is a very brief summary. Would you just like to etch that out a little, Sarah?
Yes, so I think that gave us an opportunity just to look at our procedures and just check on make sure that we were doing everything that we could. So if you want to go into the specifics of how we manage sort of risk, then refer to that obviously in a private section. But we've got two. But just broadly, we've got two policies here. One is around audit. So this is around us doing routine checks, or regular checks, I should say, just to hopefully see if we can, so we've got the opportunity to spot anything that's looking amiss and then take action. And as I said, we've already instituted that, and we'll report back to you annually on that. With this sort of thing, we've got a collection of 40,000 items. It's you can't audit everything. So what numbers are sensible numbers? So we've come up with something that we think is sort of pragmatic. So that's essentially what we're going to do. And then I will report to you formally as a management committee. So if there's anything that does go amiss, you have sight of that and then can take action as you feel required. And obviously we have different audits taking place in the museum and which is obviously open to the public, and the study centre, which is obviously just open to staff and visitors, but supervised. And then the other policy is around damage and loss. So should we find anything, making sure that is reported properly back up to me, and then on to Stuart, and then to the chair, and then to the committee. So that's another policy, looking at ensuring that if anything does happen, we are then tracking that. So those two policies tend to kind of work in together. And then ultimately, as I said, we will put this all together into the collections development strategy that going forward. But just for the moment, just to kind of make belt and braces to make sure that we just have tightened up our procedures a little bit in response to that, to what happened. It might be that Greg has some views on this from his own experience.
First of all, question from Councillor Williams.
Thank you. You're doing an internal audit, and you've got an external auditor doing an external audit. Will he be auditing what you do as well, or is this just two separate entities?
No, they're two separate entities. I mean, the auditor has a challenge to work to think about how he can audit what 40,000 collection as well. So that's additional and completely separate.
Thank you.
Is the management committee satisfied that appropriate work is being done on this sensitive matter? Bearing in mind that when the independent charity is vested, there will be a whole series of policies and procedures which will be taken in and reviewed. But I'm happy that we give detailed attention to the appendix, which is within your papers. But are we nonetheless happy that we are reassured that appropriate progress is being made in the matter, and we'll review it in due course?
Yeah.
Councillor Martin.
Absolutely. I just wanted to ask one question, Sarah. You mentioned regular checks. What's regular?
So we're doing. I think we've agreed that we would do Okay. I think can we go into private session for this? Well, I suppose, I mean, we do. So I suppose in terms of the public spaces within the museum, which are open to the public, we do checks multiple times a day. Okay, when we're talking about the checks over at the study centre, then we would do formal checks once a year. As we're suggesting, I think that you can see that we've selected, we'll have a certain number of checks in a certain number of spaces. Then there would always be informal checks. Every time somebody makes a request, say, to view an object in the collection, that essentially is an audit. So those things are going on the side, but the formal checks, we've got different checks according to the different spaces.
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
We therefore agreed that this is a matter for review in due course, but we we have sufficient comfort in the progress which is being made and in the security it lends to the collection. Agreed.
Great.
Thank you very much. That allows me to draw your attention to the date of the next meeting, which is Monday, the 28th of October at 2 p.m. And that will take place in this room. Thank you very much. I'm now able to close the meeting and to thank you all for your contributions and for the attendance of our two other friends of the museum and gallery.